viewers, welcome to my happy place. Dogs, jooks and guitars. Let's go in and see what we're doing today. G'day viewers, what a gorgeous day it is today. Blue sky, sunshine, great to be alive. And doing some luthier work. So the luthier work today is a bit different. That's the reason why I'm recording it for prosperity. And that I'm doing my arm bevel, and I've started the ebony binding. Have you used ebony binding before? I'm kind of liking it against the Tassie Blackwood, but that also requires that the arm bevel be in ebony. And ebony for a piece that big that I then sand down to 1/2 mil thick for the purposes of the veneer is quite expensive, and I'm going to try and stain it. Ooh, yes. So I've stained this piece overnight, well, for 4 hours, and it doesn't get all the way in as you'd expect, and you may be able to see there that I've shaved a bit off just to see how much it did get in. And my suspicion is that once the time comes to, I've already bent it in shape and carved it, so that'll go in there as the first sacrificial piece. Remember, I'm too thick, so I need a sacrificial piece in there, and then I put the binding over that. Otherwise the binding's not thick enough to cover the double thickness of my sides. Yeah. So I've bent that on the pipe. While I'm there, I'll just show you what I do there. Not too many people do it this way because it's a bit old school. It's just a dirty old piece of pipe that I bought on the internet. I just bought all the pieces. You can buy it like that, and then the gas, and then I put it in the hole like that, and I keep spraying that with water so there's plenty of steam coming out. And using a stick on the top, I bend. It's quite simple. So that's how I get that shape. And then, so importantly, stain is just stains everything. It's really savage, and I've got to be so careful. So my plan is to ostracize or quarantine the job all the way over there, and over here is my stain desk, so that, like, for example, if I did some stain, I spilt some stain like I did that, I got a little bit on my fingers, and then I touched the box, that stain's never coming out. So I have to be so careful. So keeping that in mind, I, as I said, stained 2 pieces actually overnight. This was going to be the purfling holder, but that's definitely going to get rubbed down into the white, or into the non-stained component. So as such, I'm going to abandon that idea and use the extra piece of ebony that I have to use as this sacrificial piece that holds the purfling in. In my mind, that means I don't have to worry about the stain being rubbed away and then having to touch it back up and then run the risk of it bleeding into the rest of the job, which is so critical that that doesn't happen. And then the big ask is, I don't have a piece of ebony that goes. The reason why I'm doing this is I don't have a big piece of ebony to go over that, nor am I prepared to pay for a piece that is big enough. So it has to be like that piece. And then veneer it. So what I'm going to try and do is stain it, and we'll see how that works. So that's what I'm doing differently today. Wish me luck. Okay, so I've glued the first sacrificial piece on that was stained. It should be right to pull apart now. And then the next thing will be to put the binding on, or cut the binding, and get that ready. Pliers for that. Just go and grab my pliers selection. Not really the ones I wanted. That's the one I wanted. Let's it's got a bent end. Throw that in the bin. Sorry about this. And then back to the job. So this is the piece I want. So this will be the piece that'll, I'm using whatever I can to put on the job so as to ensure that I don't touch it much for fear of getting stain on it. Any precautions you can make are good precautions. So from here, damn it, where's my pencil? Grab the pencil. Put that into there. To there, yes. Now we're going to bend it down from here. Just here, yep. And then bend it back up from here. Like that. So I want to take a bit off. I want the bottom nice and straight, so it lines up with this edge. And I want the top to have some removed so that it makes that bend from there down. Anyway, I mean, I'm not going to go into how that's done because there's plenty of people that show you how to do an arm bevel. I would credit Chris from Driftwood Guitars. If you wanted, he'd credit someone else that taught him. But that's not what I'm here for. I just want to show where I'm going with all this using the ebony. I found a piece of veneer that I might use. It's tiger, but I think once I stain it you won't notice it, and some would say it's a waste of the veneer, but I got that for nothing, so it's not a waste of cost. So continuing the story, I've now got the purfling in there. I've shaved off, or made half thickness basically of that piece of binding, so that it'll bend down. So then it bends down. You can see, I hope, there. That's the original piece that I glued on. This the sacrificial component of it, and that is stained. This is ebony. So, and then so I've bent that around to there, as you can see, hopefully, and that's where I've reduced the thickness so that it now bends into the existing binding run. So now the step is to use the other spare piece of ebony that I have to use as the the purfling retainer. So I just want to make sure I've got plenty of length there. I might use the original bend. That way it doesn't stress it too much, so I need to actually take it from there. Hopefully that's right. And then around to about there. Now I'm going to half thickness than that, like I did the other piece, using my trusty sander, which is quite noisy, so I won't run it on camera, but you get the idea. Reduce that by half so that it only has to be high enough to retain the purfling. I'm going to have to plane it down anyway, so it doesn't really have to be too neat, as long as I trim it into this edge here and trim it into this edge here. That way I've got, whoop, ran the wrong way. That way I've got the ebony that I'll be shaving down at that angle. Hopefully that's making sense to you. And the ebony doesn't matter if the stain doesn't go through it because it's that colour all the way through. That makes sense too, I trust it does. And so if we didn't have enough lighting before, then we certainly have enough lighting now. So you can see what we're up to. It's later in the afternoon, as you can probably tell by the sun, so this should be well and truly dried and firmly in place using the standard glue, the tight bond. Anything that can be possibly seen, this is how I do it anyway, anything that can be possibly seen after the event has to be done in tight bond. It's the only thing that really goes clear. I mean, even epoxy, I think, doesn't go as clear as tight bond does with the timber. Might need more pliers for some of these, on account of they broke when I took them off. Oh. There we go. Pop them in the container. I had these clamps on really just as a assurance or reassurance. One, and that one's in the bin. So hopefully you can see how closely I got here. That's really where it all counts, because that's the edge you're going to see. It's sticking out a bit there, but that's because it's bent over. I think that might do. Hopefully there's not too big a gap there. I suppose the beauty of ebony is you can always fill it. And that's where we're up to. Now for the shaping. Basically have to cut that square like that, all the way down to the top of the binding on this side, and that edge on this side. Won't that be fun? And then using the neat little hand plane that I have, so that's a satisfying sound. Not that I really need it, but so satisfying. Or did I already say that? I think I did. There's really not much to say, so I'll say nothing. Sometimes the less said, the better. Don't look at that, that's a shocking job. All it was is to hide that dodgy rosette that I did. So there's ways of fixing things, ways of fixing stuff up. So. If you'd call that a fix, but it's a pretty radical fix, let's face it. Noting that I've got the right radius underneath the back, so that's the 5 metre radius. That just holds it all down nice and neatly, and that way there's minimal risk of damaging using that side, but in the back. Lovely. Anyway, we're getting there. Won't be finished tomorrow though. I said it won't be finished tomorrow. G'day viewers. Okay, so I've glued the binding on. As you can see, it's come up quite nice. There's a minor thin spot there, which I sort of anticipated. I might have to fill that. It's a bit yucky. But other than that, that's the only issue. Maybe a little bit of issue there. But still, it's pretty good. I'm happy with it. So I've moved on to the bevel and I've started attacking that. So first of all, I just chiseled, working with the grain, and then my hand plane because it's basically got a wider blade. And now I'm up to the big hoo-ha, which is pretty savage. As you can see, it's also, you can see just here where that's the original sacrificial piece that I stained. So it's obviously getting worked down past the staining, which is what's anticipated. The question I have, I guess, is whether I will stain all of this before I put the stained veneer on, just in case, you know, the veneer gets too thin. I don't know. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Still yet to come. Okay, so I've got that pretty flat, as in flat that way, using a finer file after I used the big gouger. And then I've glued little bits and pieces in here of ebony because there was a bit of a gap between there and there, which is what this tape is about. Now this tape, so I've just put this tape on and I'm now cutting the form. I assume you've seen this before, but I figured I'd just throw it in just to complete the picture. It's really just to give us a rough guideline as to how big the veneer is going to be, or the shape of the veneer. It's alright, not really focusing on what we're doing there, are we? I've been sanding all morning, so I'm a bit knackered. I'm ready for a lunch and a rest in front of YouTube, watch my favourite shows, which I won't go into here. Suffices to say, there's plenty of viewing over the course of the day, if I want. And then just run that right through the purfling, basically. Should be able to see it through there. So rough as it is, that should give me the form, or thereabouts, of the bevel veneer. I wouldn't ordinarily be doing this on top of the tape, but because I'm going to stain the bevel veneer, I want to make sure it gets stained as well as it gets dried before I try and fit it, so that none of the wet stain leaks into the rest of the guitar. So as I said, all I did was install a few chips that I cut off this with a Stanley knife just to fill that gap, and then I'm going to file that down nicely. So moving over to the staining desk, that's my neck, which I've already started. Obviously it's got a ways to go, but let's put that way over there because we don't need any stain on that either. So long enough is the question. Only just. Whew. Like I said, only just. Oh, damn it. It's not going to be any good. Damn it. Alright, we go the other way. Starting in this corner. What do we think? That'll do. This one. I'll get my big Stanley blade, giving it plenty of excess. Probably going to be a bit too thick, damn it. And what we do is put plenty of Type 1 original formula on that and let it set for an hour on both the veneer and the mating surface. And then iron it on is the plan. Again, I credit Chris from Driftwood Guitars. I think I've already done that, but it doesn't hurt to cite your references. Alright. Hopefully that'll do. And how am I going to stain that? Oh dear. Doesn't quite fit in the pan. Oh, just broke it. Damn it. Alright, so now I've got to glue it up. I don't want to glue it before I stain it though. Oh! Alright, we've got 2 pieces. That way it will fit. It's going to be a bit dodgy, I think. Oh well. At least it fits now. Okay, I'm breaking out the Japan Black. And pour it on. Now, based on my tests, it's going to need at least 4 hours to soak through. And now's a good time to walk away and don't touch the guitar because I've got a bit on my fingers. Okay. Still haven't sold my bike. Okay, so as I said earlier, I've planted some, or glued some extra ebony in there just to fill the gap. I'm going to use the scraper to make sure it's straight line between top to bottom, and it is, which is good. Unfortunately, you'll see just there I've gone too far into the timber, and just there I'm into the timber. So I'll be rubbing those back a fair bit once we've got it glued on. Now I actually soaked this overnight, so it's had a good 12 hours of soaking. It's had a good 4 hours of drying. You recall I broke the damn thing when I put it in the bath. So it'll go on like that. So I'll just tack it with a bit of super glue and hold it in position. And then I'll rub the glue on the veneer, as well as just grab my stuff. It's just accelerant. Yep, it's good. Oh, could I use more? Probably not. Is that bang on? I think it's bang on. Accelerant applied. Let it stay together. Put it back in the fridge. Break out my tight bond. Back in the fridge. This is my office. It's beauty, isn't it? And back on the job. Okay, so I need some tight bond. Oh, she blows. Just remember to wipe these off before I finish using them, damn it. Just another use for a sandpaper on a stick. Yep. Alright, there we go. And apparently you have to use, according to my mate Chris from Driftwood Guitars, you have to use the original version, not the blue or the green. Got to use the red, because apparently this doesn't work. The other thing that I found about the blue and the green is that they don't dry clear like this stuff does. And it may not be clear, but it's certainly not doesn't leave a residual, or doesn't leave a black line like I know the green stuff does. And you don't need that. I mean, the blue is for food grade, like if you're doing workbench, doing cutting boards, etc. And the green is for outdoor waterproofing, none of which is required for a guitar. So once I've applied this, I need to wait exactly 1 hour, no more, no less. Get your iron out, get it ready. Be interested to see whether the stain comes off on the iron. That said, I've got my own iron, I don't use the inside iron, I use the outside iron, which is already pretty knackered, let's face it. Hey Siri, set a 10-minute timer. Actually, I don't think Siri works when you're in camera mode. Damn. I'll do that when I hang up. All right, so come back in an hour and we'll see how we're going. Okay, through the miracle of video, that's 1 hour. Okay. Put the locks on. And go. Okay, it's happening. It's happening. Coming out fine over here. But I think it'll work. Ever the optimist. So I'm working on the top edge first. There'll inevitably be a slight bend in it. As in it won't be perfectly straight from top to bottom. And for the sake of video brevity, I think I'll wind it up there, but you get the idea. You'll get to see how it turns out, trust me. Good or bad. Okay, so I'll just put that tape there to protect that surface while I grab my chisel and take away what needs to be taken away. Oh. Oh. Might be a bit too much to take away. That grain's running the opposite way, so I have to go this way. Now, unfortunately, even though I soaked it overnight, as you can see, the stain hasn't gone all the way through. So Houston, we're going to have a problem. And I'll just keep working on it. And I'll keep you updated. If it was all black, it would look awesome, but it ain't, so it don't. Anyway, as always, there's a way around these things, I'm sure. We just got to work it out, and we'll work it out together. Happy days. Okay, I'm not entirely dissatisfied with that. Obviously, using a piece of ebony would have been much simpler. But I just didn't, well, even if for lack of money, or even if I had the money, I just couldn't buy a piece of ebony that big. You can buy you can buy a headstock blank, you can buy a fretboard, you can buy a bridge blank, but you can't buy an armrest blank. So I think this is going to actually work. I don't know if you can see that, but so what I've been doing is, again, still quarantining the stain over here and just putting a tiny bit on the end of that earbud, and
just swashing it on. I'm reluctant to do too much while I'm holding the camera because this is one of those occasions where you need your chewing gum concentration. So I've done that line down there, as you can see, and then I've got more to do down there, but because I had the piece of ebony in between the black, white, black purfling, that's absorbing it. I really don't want to go any closer, because as soon as the dye runs into, stain runs into that white, the whole thing's ruined. Had I used, say, a mother of pearl, well, not a mother of pearl, a taupo, shellfish, what do you call it? That stuff around the outside, probably wouldn't have been such an issue, but because I've used the black, white, black purfling, it's more critical that I don't get it on there. So I think that will work. The other thing I thought of doing was just covering the white with a bit of shellac just to seal it, but I still reckon that once the stain gets on it, it would be gone. Anyway, we're getting there. I think it's going to work out.